the Conservator and the Rising Tide. Elias Thorne, no relation to the astronomer, but with the same burden of precision, was the chief conservator at the Grand Museum of Antiquities. His world was one of quiet, meticulous control. Climate-controlled rooms, surgical tools, and the slow, careful process of preserving history. Outside the lab, however, Elias was crippled by acute anxiety. Every unexpected noise, every shift in routine sent his heart racing. He lived in perpetual fear of a crisis that would shatter the fragile order he maintained. His biggest fear materialized during the worst summer storm the city had seen in decades. The rain overwhelmed the drainage system, and a pipe burst in the museum's foundation. The flood alarm blared, a harsh, aggressive sound that ripped through the quiet halls. The water was rising rapidly in the lowest levels. The storage area known as the crypt, which housed the oldest, most delicate artifacts, irreplaceable Roman glass, linen scrolls thousands of years old, and fragile wooden statuary. Elias was the only person on site who knew the crypt's layout and the condition of every fragile piece. Yet, when the security team looked to him for direction, he froze. His body locked up, the crisis manifesting as a deafening static in his mind. It's too much. The loss will be total. I can't fix this. I can't even breathe. A young security guard, David, grabbed his arm. Dr. Thorne, we have 10 minutes before the water breaches the linen racks. What do we move first? Looking at David's panicked, expectant face, Elias saw not the overwhelming crisis, but a single point of order. He wasn't being asked to stop the flood. He was being asked to list 3 things. The realization hit him. Courage wasn't the absence of panic. It was the ability to apply his knowledge through the panic. He took a sharp, rattling breath and forced his mind to compartmentalize. David, he managed, his voice shaky but steadying. You and 2 others go to aisle 4. Retrieve the ceramic urns first. They can be submerged, but do not let them hit the floor. Use the rolling carts from the main hallway. The command was specific, tactical, and immediate. David nodded and ran. Elias began directing the salvage operation, moving with unnatural focus. His anxiety, usually a paralyzing force, became a hyper-awareness. His fear of mistakes made his instructions painfully precise. He wasn't Elias, the man consumed by fear. He was Elias, the tool of preservation, a living map of the crypt. Aisle 6! He yelled across the flooded corridor to a custodian. The wooden sarcophagi fragments. Wrap them in plastic sheeting before you lift. If the wood gets wet, it will warp. Treat the water like acid. For the next 2 hours, while the fire department worked on the main break, Elias orchestrated chaos. He directed teams through inches of murky water, prioritizing the most vulnerable items over the most valuable, knowing exactly which artifact could withstand a few splashes and which would instantly dissolve. He didn't rush or despair. He just gave the next instruction, then the next. He never once felt calm, but the intense focus required to process the data, which rack, which material, which exit route, left no room for the internal noise of his fear. By the time the water was contained, the crypt was a disaster. But the most critically fragile artifacts, the 4,000-year-old linen scrolls, the delicate glass, and the water-soluble manuscripts were safe, stacked carefully in the dry upper-level labs. Elias finally sat on a dry step, exhausted, his clothes soaked. He realized he had just led a high-stakes life-or-death operation, entirely on instinct and knowledge. He still felt the tremor of anxiety in his hands, but mixed with it was something new and solid, competence. The next morning, the museum director stood before the weary staff. The loss is minimal, which is a miracle, she said, looking directly at Elias. And it's a miracle performed by Dr. Thorne. He didn't wait for permission or resources. He used what he knew to conquer a crisis. Elias never lost his anxiety, but he learned a crucial lesson. The goal isn't to erase fear, but to act anyway. He found that his greatest weakness, his compulsive need for meticulous control, had, in the face of genuine catastrophe, become his greatest strength. He preserved history not by being fearless, but by being the most knowledgeable person in the room who refused to let his fear win.